So I'm Nate Purkeypile of Just Purkey Games, and I'm working on the Axis Unseen, which is a heavy metal horror hunting game.
This is awesome to finally see like the full reveal of this game. You've been teasing this since you came on our panel for Indylicious earlier this year. Like we and like I've seen a little bit of tidbits here and there, but like the whole thing coming together for that trailer, it was just really exciting to finally see it all come out.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have it out there. So now I can just show whatever, no PR people hold me back.
So like to jump into like the concept of this, it's described as a horror heavy metal hunting game. Can you go into more details on that?
Yeah, I mean, the basic idea is like if monsters were real, like, Bigfoot and werewolves and all these other things, and you could hunt them with heavy metal playing.
Nice. And like from the trailer, we saw a little bit of it. Like it's not just like it kind of starts out as you're doing the hunting, you're tracking these animals. You actually, like, if you hit them with an arrow, they'll bleed and you track the blood. But like there's sort of a time management system here, because if it gets dark, you're in danger and you might start getting hunted.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be like more extreme at night, but the whole time they will hunt you, like the same way that you track them, where you see their footprints, they can do the same thing. So if you like walk through mud and leave footprints, they'll follow that and then they'll find you. Or if you're like downwind and they smell you, they'll come for you. So It's kind of like hunting simulator games that exist now, where you're like hunting deer and stuff, but instead of them being like, oh no, I'm scared, and they run off, they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna eat your face.
And like it's not just like in the imagery, but like heavy metal is actually like a huge thematic part of this whole thing. Can you speak a little bit to who is it that's working with you on this as far as the music goes? It's
Clifford Meyer.
Right. What has it been like working with him and sort of building that sort of musical identity of this game?
It's gone really great. Actually, the song used in the trailer is like one of the very first samples he sent when I was like, I'm looking for something with like heavy metal, but primitive instruments from like all around the world, and sent him a bunch of like primitive music also. And that was like the basis of that track. And so he's just been like spot on, nailing it. And the soundtrack as a whole now completely exists now. It's like 90 minutes, actually a little bit more than that, of music all done now. And I'm just hooking that stuff all up in game, and it turned out great.
And again, like it also inspires like a lot of that imagery that you see in the game. We see like the cave with the like massive skulls and the horns coming out of it. Can you speak to like the inspirations? Like what particular heavy metal inspired you in the visuals of this game?
It's more inspired by like surrealist art, like Giger and how do you say it, like Bakinski or whatever. Stuff like that. It's just these really exaggerated giant monoliths and all sorts of huge forms in the landscape. I just think that stuff is really interesting. So it seemed like a good fit for heavy metal, and everybody likes skulls. So that one I did in like 40 minutes. I was just like, I want some cool skulls, and everyone seemed to like it a lot.
What do you think your background in like working in games like Fallout and Elder Scrolls helped you with create this game? Like it's obviously like it has a very like open-esque kind of open environment, with snow and trees and bows.
I think I have like a pretty good background now in just building these expansive areas and doing it pretty fast too, with like taking a handful of assets and using them in lots of creative ways, but also finding the fastest way to do those assets. Not to say it's like, let's find the worst way to do it, but it's like, how can I do it efficiently? And so I mentioned doing that like skull sculpture in like 40 minutes. Like that's what these VR goggles are for now, is I sculpt stuff in VR really fast, but then bring it on the computer to finalize it. And I can do it way faster that way. So that's been useful.
And a major part of the Axis Unseen is that like you've been building this from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5. What has it felt like building something from the ground up in that engine?
It's worked out great, even though it's early access. Like the issues that I've had are pretty minor, honestly. And I'd say the improvements that they've made with 5 make it possible for me to do this game. Like doing an open world game with dynamic lighting and stuff would have been a lot more difficult with the previous iterations. So I'm really happy with the changes that they've done. And like the whole nanite thing with those super detailed models lets me work super fast, where I can just put those absurdly high poly models just straight into the game. Like before, you'd have to be like, oh, I'm going to make the low detailed version and then project and the high detailed one onto it, but you don't have to do any of that anymore, especially because I've stylized it a little bit where it's like flatter colors so you can see the tracks. Like that stuff just goes straight in. So it's another, like, weirdly enough, even though it's more high detail, it's actually faster.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing on your Twitter the other day, like where you had these models that had like literally millions of like polygons in them, and just like the efficiency and the streamlined nature of being able to just stick that right in where it was once like a whole process of building that and then putting it in the game.
Yeah, I think that will let me do a lot more art, and that art will also look better, which is really nice. Like those individual models are as much as like an entire world that you're seeing all at once in previous games I've worked on. So that's really nice.
Can you talk
Right.
about like the different environments we'll explore in your world? Obviously we saw like we see forest biomes, but I see like an autumn version of it, a winter version of it. I see caves, obviously.
Yeah, I might change it a little bit as I build it, but I'm planning on having at least 6 different ones, like a swampy area. You saw another one I've just called the darkness, where it's like cloaked in darkness and you can't even see until you get more powers, because you're also getting the powers of these creatures. Like that's what those particles in the air are scent particles. So you'll improve like your nose and your eyes and harness all these powers to explore those different regions. Like you can't just run into somewhere that's pitch black if you don't have a way to see. Yeah.
Can you give us an example of those powers, like how we'll level up our weapon as well?
Well, the weapon is pretty straightforward, where you'll get like different bows and like better strings, but you'll be able to also see like colors that weren't there before, to maybe see like weak points on creatures or messages that people have left that you weren't able to see before that. Or if you're able to see those scent particles also, you might see like plants that are poisonous in the swampy area and be like, oh, I'm not going to go downwind of that toxic plant. I'm going to avoid that now that I can see these like scent particles flowing around the world.
That's an interesting thing, like how much scent works into the mechanics of the game. Has it been hard sort of building that system where it affects not only like you and your quarry, but also just like the natural world around you?
It's not that bad actually, because it's kind of just like this cone that sprays things in a direction, and it gets a little bit abstracted for the AI and how they know about that, but it's not too bad. But they can also control it, which is kind of like a fun thing, where if they notice you, they can like change the wind direction to pull it towards them, so then it's like harder to get away from them.
Nice. And like we talked about this a little bit earlier in the year, but like you moving from somewhere like Bethesda into just like you're pretty much not entirely solo, obviously, but pretty much it's all on you now. What has it been like taking this far into the game in the process of development? What has it been like taking this all on yourself as opposed to like being part of a massive group or team?
It's definitely pretty different doing everything pretty much all on my own. I mean, I have the composer and I had someone do like the logo art, but other than that, it's like me in the game doing everything. So it's a lot less meetings, I would say. And it's nice having like a stable tool set also, because normally we're trying to like build everything as we go, and I had to spend, I'd say, easily half my time working on tools and things like that. But now I get to focus just on making the game.
I saw for right now it can be wishlisted, but there is not really a release expectation as of yet. Do you have sort of a timeline that you would like that you're looking for when it comes to like any playable version of this?
It's something I'm gonna like reevaluate. I had a basic plan, but now I've been building what I call like the vertical slice, which is like an hour of the game or so. And I'm gonna figure out, based on how fast I did that and how many creatures I could do in that, like what is the date actually looking like that at that point, and figure it out. So at this point, I've only worked on it for 6 months though, so there's still a bit to go.
Do you see this as a project you intend to maybe go into early access with and get feedback on, or will you be shooting straight for that sort of 1.0?
I've definitely thought about early access, because I think it might be a good candidate for that, because it is kind of a simulator focused on the hunting and everything like that. And even though there's a narrative element, I wouldn't say it's like the focus. This isn't like The Last of Us or something. So that could definitely be something that's useful.
Yeah, like, I mean, so obviously you're on PC, but do you have any plans to do console, or even you enjoy messing around with VR, plans for VR?
This is like my most asked question about the game, and I'd love to put it on consoles, but it's definitely like a bit more complicated when it's just me. So I'm gonna figure that out and see, like, can I work with Sony or Microsoft and make that work a little easier, or find a good partner for that. So we'll see. And as for VR, like, obviously I find VR pretty useful and interesting, but right now Unreal 5 doesn't actually support it, even for like the basic rendering of their new stuff. So right now it's not actually possible. I'd love to do it someday, but it would also be like an additional undertaking. So probably something like post-release, because I can't just like check the box and like, now it renders. Like, I would want to make it a lot more involved, where you would then like pull the arrows out of the quiver and stuff, like by hand. Which reminds me of another point of how the whole game is designed too, is like UI free. So there's no like ammo counters or anything. You check your quiver to see how many arrows you have. You'll look at like real maps to figure out where to go, things like that.
Okay, like in Firewatch kind of, right?
Yeah, I loved playing it that way, actually.
And you said you're making the vertical slice now. Are you planning to release that as like a free demo moving forward so people can try it? Is it something you're gonna show to potential investors to get a bigger budget for your game? Like, what's the plan once you get that vertical slice finished?
Yeah, that would probably be to show to like close friends and investors and stuff like that, because it would probably still be like not really a full game or a demo thing. It's still kind of like a prototype thing where people are not going to want to play that for a long time. It just helps me flesh out the ideas and plan out the rest of the project and like my workflow for everything.
Do you think you'll go to Fig or GoFundMe at that point, maybe, or do you want to keep it kind of, private investors only?
I like being able to focus on the game and not so much dealing with stuff like that. So I'd probably keep it something more small scale. And plus, also, I get why people have to do that, but in my case, it's just me, so it's a little bit easier to manage when I don't have to fund a whole team.
Awesome. Where can people go to support your game, and where can they find out more information about it?
You can go to Just Purkey Games or follow me on Twitter at @Purkeypile.
Perfect. I think that's
you can also wishlist this on Steam and Epic Game Store right now.
Yes, that's right.
That helps a lot, so you should do that because it does actually help.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, wishlist, they say, are king.